Hi everyone, welcome to a brand new episode of the Women of Community Banking podcast. Today we've got a very interesting episode with a huge group of women leaders from TDECU. As you can see in the background, these two pretty ladies have put their backgrounds as TDECU, and Corbett was trying to, so that's fine. So this works well. Uh, I'll do a quick introduction, even before doing introduction. So hi ladies. Firstly, thank you. Thank you for taking your time out to join this podcast today. Again, it's a confusion. It's a group cast podcast. I don't know what to call this, but again, thank you for joining. I mean, I really appreciate this time that you're spending with me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Excited to be here.
Quick introduction, who these powerful, beautiful ladies are, right? Starting with Qiara. Qiara is the Chief Human Capital Officer at ECU. She is very vocal about, okay, that's one designation that I have, but the most important thing is I'm a wife and a mom, and I respect that, right? So her focus has been community building for ages, right? And that's what she wants to continue. That's what she can bring at ECU every single day. That's the reason she loves her job. Long story short. Moving on to Aparna, interesting story. So I connected with Aparna. I think Aparna, I had to wait for 4 months for you guys to give me a slot, right?
Thank you for your patience with us.
So I connected with Aparna almost I don't even remember, I think 4 to 5 months back, and I invited her to the podcast. And she suggested, let's get the entire group to the podcast. I'm like, amazing, that's even more fun. So Aparna is a chief legal officer at TDECU, been in financial services for more than 2 decades, right? Now, chief legal officer is one part of her designation of the role, but she does a bunch of other things: vendor management, fraud, risk. The list continues, right? So let's not get into that. She also believes that family comes first, right? So that's another mantra. Pretty much that's what who Aparna is. I'm sure I have done a horrible job introducing you guys, but if you want to add something, Qiara and Aparna, you can. After I do the same horrible thing for Corbett. Corbett is a chief of staff at TDECU. She's come from large banks. One of the very interesting thing where she's grown up. TDECU is based out of that same locality or the same place, I would say, right? So she's seen TDECU growing up from a mom and pop store to actually what TDECU today is, right? So she's very passionate about what she brings onto the table. Now, I was asking her, how on a scale of 1 to 10, how much does she love or hate her job? Because being a chief of staff is a really difficult task because I've done it at EXL a long time back, right? But looks like she loves it, right? So she is one of the I would say people in the machinery because of which TDECU runs, because the role is very important. So, ladies, I hope I've done half enough justice to do your introductions. If not, feel free to go and chip in.
I think you've done a fabulous job. What you'll find is we all wear multiple hats and we walk in our paths uniquely. And so you'll hear a little bit more about that as we walk through this podcast. Thank you for the opportunity.
Well, it's completely my pleasure having all of you join the podcast. I mean, this wouldn't have happened again without Aparna. So, thank you, for introducing the entire group to me. I am elated. Uh, let's start the group cast podcast, whatever. Right? Let's start with the first question. Put let me put Aparna on the spot. I don't usually put people on the spot, but we have to start with someone. So, Aparna, my question is, you also came from outside the credit union ecosystem, right? Even you are not over here for the last 20 years. So, how did you begin your journey with credit unions, right? And what kept you here?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And I kind of look at it less about sort of a career move and more about like what is kind of grounds me in my purpose. And I will tell you that the turning point for me moving out of a big bank that I had been at for almost 20 years into moving to the credit union was our CEO, Isaac Johnson, had come to speak to the executive MBA class that I was part of at the time. And I immediately recognized that he had strategic courage, I would call it. The ability to really look at the bigger picture, the longer term picture, and make difficult decisions, right? That might not sometimes be popular or comfortable. But when I look at, what is the change that I'm going to make for my career and to move into something that I really wanted to have purpose. I wanted to be connected with the community here. And so when I heard that, I thought, you know what, this is somebody I'd like to work with and I'd like to learn from. And that was really, I think six months, maybe even longer later, he called me and said, hey, you said you might be interested. Are you still interested? And I jumped on it. And so that's, it's been almost 2 years. What kept me here though is really the people, right? The team that I'm building, the peers that I work with, Corbette, Qiara, really strategic um, executives who, we sit at the table and we're not afraid to have the difficult discussions. I can say that one of the things that's been very interesting and have a learning opportunity for me is, we can all be there and challenge each other very respectfully. But we really are making decisions that are coming at probably a very pivotal moment for credit unions. So it's tough. And there are days when we're pulling our hair out, or with those multiple hats, throwing half of them on the floor. But it really is, when you see people who are working as hard as you are, who have the same passion, inspiration, and you can learn from, this is the place for me. And I'm so excited about where we're going.
Mhm. I'll just add to that. Everything that Aparna said resonates with me. There's not a day that I wake up where I'm not excited about coming to work with my peers. So for me, my career didn't start in banking. And honestly, I wasn't even thinking about financial services when I was navigating college. But I knew that I wanted to work in an industry where I was making a difference. So I started off in the staffing industry working for one of the largest woman owned staffing agencies in the greater Houston area. And then I shifted to healthcare, worked there for over 15 years. And my focus was on supporting people, helping them navigate their careers, and helping people see their potential. That's the kind of work that fed my soul. And then I attended a conference a couple years ago and I met a colleague who asked me about the credit union space. So candidly, I had to do some research. I was online. Outside of being a member, I didn't know what it meant to work for a credit union. And so after figuring out that credit union space is mission based, a people first industry, I immediately knew that it aligned with my values and what my focus has been as a professional, as a human being. So now that I'm here, I regret that I've been missing out for so many years, because it's such a special industry to be in, knowing that every decision that you make impacts not only the people that you work with, but the community. So, similar to what Aparna said, I love the people that I work with, but I also love the mission that we have, as we navigate our community and our mission.
Corbett, you would add something?
Absolutely. I would just double down on what they said. It is a pleasure to come to work. It's a joy to come to work every day and work with this team and our extended team, because everybody is very passionate about what they do. And the work that we do isn't a type of tangible work. You don't always get to see the results like someone who's in construction, like my husband. I see a house coming and it's built. But what's exciting is when I get to walk into the community. I mean, I live in the community where these banks are, and you see the impact that you're making. You're sending kids to school, you're, making loans, and they're actually buying those new homes. I mean, it's really exciting for me, to see the way that the organization gives back. So I'm just thrilled to be part of this organization.
Yeah, I mean, that's the most important table stakes, right? Unless you feel every Monday morning is something you want to wake up and do the same thing,
Mhm.
it's high time to change what you do. But it looks like you guys just love it. Uh, Moving on to the next question, I want to start with Qiara, maybe, right? Qiara, I mean, you spoke about, for you, priorities, family. And I think for all of us, it should be, right? I mean, it wasn't for me, at least till a year back, but now I think it has been. So I want to talk about that more. So what was the biggest hurdle, right, that you faced as a women leader? It's not easy, right? And how did you navigate through it?
Yeah, it's a good question. I can think of a number of things that have been a challenge for me as a woman leader. But I'll start with myself, because it's easy to talk about balance and how to navigate that, but my biggest struggle has been finding myself and most importantly, trusting my voice and what I bring to the table. So um, it, I will tell you that as I've navigated my career through my executive journey, I'm typically the only insert adjective. So it could be the youngest, it could be, one of the newest leaders, or someone. I mentioned earlier, I was new to the credit union industry. I may not have as much knowledge from the perspective of depth in the credit union industry. So I've always felt kind of different. And as I've matured in my profession, I've embraced that. I've embraced being different and making my mark. So early on, I used to second guess myself. So I would stay quiet if I felt different. Um, I would think about things that other folks would be saying, and I would always regret, oh my gosh, I wish I would have said that because I was thinking exactly what that person was saying. And it wasn't because I didn't have ideas, but it was because I wasn't sure how they would land in the room, or if I wouldn't say things perfectly. And candidly, my husband tells me that I'm an introvert, and I think I was born an introvert, but I've slowly morphed into what I call an ambivert, so I can kind of flex between both sides. But I feel like now, it's hard to kind of keep me quiet because I'm so confident in what I bring, even though it may be different. I love to ensure that my voice matters, and it's because I know that I bring value to the table. And I know that if I show up as myself, even with an inquisitive mindset, it's going to keep the conversation flowing. So my biggest hurdle has been more so trusting my voice, making sure that I embrace being different, and knowing that I have to be mindful of how I show up, whether it's putting on my listening ears, contributing in a certain way, being confident in what I contribute in the conversation, and not shrinking, but elevating to ensure that my presence is not only seen but heard. And for me, it's about ensuring that I never lose who I am as an individual and as a professional, but also ensuring that I'm authentic in who I am when I show up in the different rooms and spaces.
I think that's very important, right? I mean, I think, same for me. I mean, I was doing management consulting before I came to credit unions. I mean, when I came here, I expected people to know what management consulting is, and it was completely alien, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's one, you know, I would say quote or advice that I follow in life from one of my mentors who not almost, who started from the first unicorn in India. Unicorn is $1 billion valuation. So he says, you can only disrupt an ecosystem when you do not know anything about the ecosystem. Otherwise, you are always preconceived about, this is the way how it works. So, I mean, all three of you come from different backgrounds. I mean, all three of you come from financial services. I mean, Corbett came from Wells. You came from other ecosystems. So that's a commonality that I can see in this group, right? That's the reason you're successful. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe Corbett, you want to add something to this? I mean, what do you think?
So, what I can say is I do identify with Qiara because I felt a little bit of imposter syndrome. But I can say that with the credit union, different from the big financial industries that I
Yep.
came from, is that the credit union has more women in the C-suite and as CEOs than banks. So it kind of empowered me in a way to come into this space that my voice would be heard, right? And then also having more women in the C-suite, like Aparna and Qiara, to help mentor me and guide me. It was something that I'd never had before, and so it's a wonderful thing. One of the things that I learned about the mindset shifting here was actually that you don't always need to break glass. As a woman, sometimes I feel like you have to do something bigger and better, right? Do more. Um, but here, if you just kind of like stay focused on the bigger picture and what the outcome is, sometimes the smaller things don't matter, right? It's how you kind of navigate and build these relationships with the individuals to achieve something more. So that's kind of what I've learned or transitioned to over my career.
Aparna, what's your 2 cents?
Yeah, no, I think Kira said being authentic, and that's something that I think as you move, within organizations, within your communities, both personally and professionally, when you can start to have that self-awareness and see like what is your authentic self. And if you know, TDCU definitely, I mean, I think I've been fortunate in my career, but for sure continuing at TDCU to be able to bring my authentic self to work, meaning I can feel comfortable showing up and saying, I don't know the answers, but I will go find it, or I will find someone who knows the answers. And that's okay, right? You don't have to know the answers to everything. You don't, you know, you can share your perspective and it might be wrong. You might be challenged, right? And that's also okay. But bringing your voice to the table and making sure that, you know, there's probably somebody else that's at least had that idea in their head, right? And so that has been, I would say, like kind of a work in progress for me, is to get to that point in my career where I finally felt comfortable saying, I don't know. I'm going to ask. I'm going to ask you all. And then sometimes I just want to brainstorm, you know, and say, you know, hey, can we all just get in and talk about these things? But I think to get to that point, sometimes it's just, you know, in my career path, both from a legal perspective and in financial services, were two areas that I think growing up were more heavily male, you know, male industries. And so I would say I had very strong female and male allies who helped me to realize that sometimes some of this is I'm putting this reflection on myself. I'm my worst critic. And so I just have to use these types of tools. And the more you do them, it's just like anything you practice, you know, in your daily life, in your professional life, and you will get to a better spot. And candidly, I still have that sometimes, right? I sit in a room and I think, should I just be quiet or should I, you know, or do I need to say this? So, but you know, something that I continue to learn. But I think that being authentic self is so key, but it is a practice.
Mm-hmm.
I think the power to say I don't know. Let's talk. That's so important. But I have another question on the sideline. Aparna, do lawyers even, you know, talk about that? That I don't know. It's about lawyers telling us what to do, right? I've never heard any lawyer tell me, you know, let's brainstorm on this thing.
It is. I mean, sorry, I'll have to respond to that because it is very hard. I mean, honestly, I think some of it's we learned this in school. Some of it's the perception that people have. But one of the things I joke around, I've had, you know, heard a lot throughout my career is, you know, you don't seem like a real lawyer, right? Meaning, you know, you come in and you're giving different perspectives and you're willing to say you don't know, or sometimes, you know, we sort of push the envelope. And I think Corbette mentioned this earlier, but TDC, you really get to participate and meaningfully contribute to the organization, to the strategy, both at an executive level, but all of our teams across the organization have that opportunity to participate. And so for me and my department that is, you know, heavily steeped in risk management, you know, legal and compliance and risk management is, you know, we have this sense of like we either people think we're going to say no or we feel like we have to have all the answers every time. And so I'm really working hard, you know, I think to build a department where it's more collaborative across the organization, where people feel less like, you know, I got to know the answers to everything. And instead, let
Yep.
me talk and find out what's happening with the business so I can get you to a good spot that helps us manage that risk, but really moves the organization forward.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that makes sense. Let me, you know, ask Corbett a question. Corbett, similar backgrounds, you know, chief of staff. So obviously you have done something right in your life, right? That you got this role of being a chief of staff. It's a pretty high impactful role, right? So what if I ask you this question that you want to share, you know, one accomplishment that you're proud of during your time at TDC?
So I think one of the accomplishments I'm very proud of is in this new role. The role is not new itself, right? But the function that the role plays is in that we have an office of the president that I've been given the autonomy and the flexibility and the support to build out. That it does include our executive support staff, our internal communications, our corporate events, and board support, and being able to align those various departments and so we can interact collaboratively and cohesively has been really exciting for me. Um, Many of us may have worked for a team at one time that might have been slightly dysfunctional and you couldn't really get things done. And because it's not always a hire, may not always be a win. It may look good on paper and you pull them in and then it just doesn't work. And so to be able to find a team and put a team together that actually is high performing and they really are all in about the purpose and about what they want to achieve is really exciting for me. And to see it come to fruition is great. I think that's kind of one of the things I'm most proud about professionally. I would say I do have a personal accomplishment that I've done through the support of our CEO, Isaac, and with Perna, Qiara, and the rest of the staff. I was able to go back to law school while working full time and got my JD. And so I thought, that's a pretty exciting thing to be able to have the support of your teammates to be able to help you do this. So that was exciting for me. Not practicing law at the moment, but being able to hone in on some of those skills has helped me tremendously.
Can I jump in? Sorry, I just want to make a pitch for sort of Corbette's probably not going to say this about herself, but working with Corbette when I first started, and Corbette has moved, I think, in corporate secretary role for the organization, supporting the board, came in to support the legal department, and still does, from time to time, when we need some advice or guidance in areas that she has learned over her decade at TDECU, but also, kind of started working in compliance and now in chief of staff. So, when you think about like really owning your career and, thinking about like, how can I provide support? Where can I provide support? And then kind of running and leaning into it. Just super impressed by the way Corbette's been able to do that. And so I think in this new role, really being able to think, bring all that experience and skills into a strategic function, I think has helped all of us both, at the executive level and in the organization. And I'm sure for Isaac as well. So thank you, Corbette.
It's the stories that like Corbette has shared that bring so much pride in what we do as an organization. And I mean this when I say like the work that we do is transformational. It literally, personally, professionally, beyond our four walls. But as a leader who leads the HR function, I always want to be able to connect the work that we're doing to direct impact. And the story that Corbette just shared, so we pay 100% tuition reimbursement, and that benefit is unique to many of our competitors that are out in the greater Houston area and beyond. So when it comes to attracting and retaining staff, we're able to sell not just a salary, but an overall experience that you'll have with ECU that can truly be life-changing. So, when you think about the accomplishments, from my lens, it's being able to see, your work come to fruition with folks like Corbette. And there's so many other stories where people can say they've navigated their career in a space that has, opened up opportunities that maybe they never even thought about.
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. And what I understand now, Corbette and Aparna are best friends because she studied law.
Honestly, I think our whole team is. Like, I feel when, the Gallup survey, do you have a best friend at work? I have many.
Yeah.
Because that relationship really is like that.
Yeah.
Okay, now maybe I want to ask you about advice to aspiring women leaders, right? Because, the podcast has viewership of, I think we clocked 100K in terms of impressions in the last 45 days. And a lot of that impression comes from aspiring leaders both on and off in credit unions, mainly credit unions, right? And I've heard people telling me the advices that they got from this podcast actually helped them get promoted in work. I was like, is this even real? Or you're just bluffing me? But I feel it's real at times. So my question is, maybe let's start with Qiara because, she is very deeply rooted into community movement, right? That's a question that I want to ask her. Qiara, what advice, do you want to give to women who want to lead but do not know where to start? Because that's a very tricky place to address.
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, I appreciate platforms like this because oftentimes people see us in roles, but they don't know the war wounds and the journey that we've been on to get to where we are today. And I'll tell you that we all had to start somewhere. So my advice is start where you are. Seriously, don't Don't try to navigate your path in the same manner that someone else did. You don't need a fancy title to be a leader. You just need to show up with intention, speak up, bring others along, and raise your hand. I think one of the most meaningful bits of advice that someone has given me is when you're comfortable, you got to start thinking about how to get uncomfortable, right? And so raise your hand, do something that's not necessarily on your job description. Volunteer to be a part of a project that's outside of your typical scope and responsibility so that you can build some new muscles. Show up, but not just in the role that you're in. Show up in a way that allows you to distinguish yourself from the crowd. And then you'll know when you're ready. When you're ready, ask for it. Advocate for yourself. Surround yourself with folks that are going to support you, not just mentors, but you need folks that are going to advocate for you when they're sitting at the table and they're thinking about who would be that next person who's ready for X. You want people to think about you, and step in with confidence, even to Aparna's point, when you don't know it all. It's about asking, being curious, and just jumping in that moment. So you got to believe in yourself. No one's ever 100% ready, but just jump and start where you are.
Perfect. Corbett, what's your take on it?
Like what Qiara said, leadership isn't about titles. It's about the impact that you make, right? And sometimes it means taking horizontal, working in another area in the same line to expand your goals and your visibility to get where you want to go. Your trajectory isn't always straight up. It will have, zigzags, and that's okay.
Makes sense. Aparna, what do you think?
Yeah, so I'm probably going to what I mentioned earlier, staying curious. I think, if you can do that, ask questions to people that, you may not normally talk to. Go, figure out what's happening, because it can help shape what you're interested in. And, to what kind of in between what Qiara and Corbette said, right? Your path you don't have to follow someone else's. It can be linear, or it can be, whatever direction. But I think, sort of trust your gut. But when you ask those questions, it's almost like data, right? The more information you have, it can help you make that decision. And candidly, for me, like, the other advice really is what we talked about earlier a little bit, was touching on some of the values that are core to each of us. And if you can, find a path professionally and personally where you feel true to those values, that makes a world of difference, because it helps you in navigating the really difficult times that we're all going to have in our careers, but also gives you that sort of fulfillment that you need. If you go off track from those values, it's really tough to, I think, sustain and think about, where do I want to go. So that's kind of to me what I think about. And one of the exercises I started doing probably 3-4 years ago was like a reflection exercise, where almost daily, like, you're collecting data on yourself, but like, what's working for me, what's not working for me. And if, there are days when I do it consistently for a month and then I forget. But when I look at it, it's just like one thing that's working and one thing that I would do differently for the day. When you start to see that, you can really hone in on, like, what are those values? What are the challenges? Who do I need to go to talk to help me make decisions on these? So it's almost like gathering data on yourself to help you make those decisions in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Understand. Yep. Now, I want to ask you guys about future of women in credit unions, right? I mean, again, to Corbett's point, I think, credit unions usually have more or larger representation of women, but still, I mean, it's just my 2 cents. I mean, it's numbers and statistics. Smaller credit unions have a lot of women in C-level, but in larger credit unions, they're not. Still lesser. So we need to do a better job in that. So maybe, Aparna, I'll ask you a question, because you came from Wells Fargo, right? You came from one of the largest commercial bankers, right? So what excites you the most about, I would say, future of women in credit unions?
Yeah. So I think the momentum, and I don't, I don't know if I'm just feeling it myself, because I'm here at the organization that's very focused on that. And, the growth and empowerment of women to make decisions and be at the table. or if it's something that's happening broader. But I feel a lot of momentum, right? The people that we're meeting, the conversations we're having. Um, Honestly, that was a big part of why I wanted to, when you suggested participating with this podcast,
Yep.
bringing, the other women that I work with daily to this podcast, because that momentum, like the conversations that we can have, the candid nature with which we can share information, I think the internet has pros and cons, right? But one of the benefits really is we can have these conversations and not feel alone, right? The struggles that we're having, sometimes it's, related to being a woman, and sometimes it's just related to just not knowing, right? And so that momentum that I'm kind of feeling across, financial services in general, which I think will, continue to help spread through credit unions in a faster, and at more scale. The more that we kind of talk about it and share, what are the things that we're learning, what are the challenges that we have.
I I agree with what Ernest said, and I love that Corbette brought this up earlier. You know, women in the credit union space, we're not sitting back and waiting to be chosen. We're choosing ourselves. We recognize the value that we're bringing to the table. Our voices are being heard. We're being celebrated. Um, there is an appreciation for the diversity of thought when making certain decisions, whether it's within our four walls or outside in the community. And I love that we're doing it our way, right? Like we're setting the stage for how others should follow along with us. And that's been a shift just in corporate America, frankly, in general. And I love that we are raising the bar and we're also pulling others along, right? So we have an obligation, in my opinion, to make sure that we continue to open up doors for other women as they navigate the corporate America space, the credit union space, um, in ways that are bringing greater creativity, a futuristic focus on how to run a business. And that gives me hope. It's exciting to be a part of this movement that will continue for years to come.
I hope so. Corbett, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And as you know, as credit unions grow, with it becoming more, achieving more scale, more mergers or possible acquisitions, like I'd like to think it's because we have women in leadership positions that this is happening,
Mm-hmm.
right? The things that women are able to offer, and yeah, I think it's nothing but positive. Promoting, whether it's internally, as credit unions get larger, promoting from internally or externally the talent that we're able to draw, to spread our movement, um, and encourage others, I think is a wonderful thing. It's exciting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I will add one thing too, just similar when you were talking, Qiara. One of the things that I really love and I'm trying to learn from Qiara is connection. And she is incredible about making connections across the community. So I know she's been heavily involved in leadership roles in the county in which our office is located, and kind of in the greater Houston area. But she's always thoughtful and mindful about, like, how do I bring other women in who either are in those roles, want to be in those roles, or want to learn about what it's like to be, involved in making strategic or difficult decisions. And so one of the things that excites me about being here is not only getting to participate, but I meet people who are intentionally also thinking about me. She sent me an email a couple weeks ago that says, "Hey, I met somebody. She's a CEO at a local company, but she's has the same passion for parks that you do. And I think y'all two would just like to connect." And I connected with that individual, and it's been wonderful, right? So just when you're surrounded by people like that, it gets you even more excited about, like, how can I now start doing that with other people across our community. So I just wanted to share that I think that's so important when, like, not just
Yeah.
saying the words that women support women, but finding ways to actually do it.
Thank you, Aparna.
Yep.
That's great to hear. So that also tells me that Qiara, me and you should be best friends, right? Because
I love a good
Yeah.
connection.
Yeah.
That's the way how things work.
Yes. Yes.
One last question I want to, wrap up this show. Right? Maybe let's start with Corbett and then Aparna and then Qiara, right? In that sequence. I mean, let's talk about one quote or let's talk about mantra, right? So everyone has their own mantra that works for them, does not work for them. So Corbett, what's your one mantra that you think really works?
So mine's actually a little long, so I'll just paraphrase, but it's more like a poem by Marianne Williamson. And the poem starts off as, our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is we are powerful beyond measure. And it goes on to encourage us to embrace our full potential and not be afraid of our greatness. Because if we shrink ourselves to make others feel comfortable, we don't serve the world, right? Or our purpose. And so it says that each person has this divine light that is meant to be expressed. And if we personally can overcome our fears and shine brightly, then we encourage others and empower them to do the same. And so it's really something that I live by, because being a woman, you can want to shrink in at times, and you don't want to overstep. You don't want to look a certain way. You don't want to say a certain thing. And so I always kind of anchor back to this and say, if I'm doing this, others around me, I encourage them to do the same. So that would be mine.
Interesting. Aparna, what's yours?
Yeah, so I was just recently talking. I have a daughter. She's almost 9 years old, and she always hears me use this quote. It's never too late to be who you might have been, because I've led a very nonlinear career path, just in, well, probably life path, but in general, and so I she hears me say that a lot. But one day she's like, "So really, what you're telling me is just never stop learning." And I was like, that's exactly it, right? Like, never stop learning. Always be curious, always be out there learning, but also, to kind of take it a step further, is really to own your journey. And think about what that is. Like, no one's, there might be people out there supporting you and helping you, but you have to be the driver of that. And I think everything we talked about, really, there's like prongs to all of that, if you never stop learning and you own your journey, you can go,
Yeah.
really soar high.
That's amazing. I mean, you guys literally have thought about this question. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Kiara, what's
Yeah.
yours?
Okay, so I read a lot, mostly like self-help books because I like to continue to challenge myself and everything that Corbett and Aparna just mentioned. I also write out things so that I'm a visual learner. So on my mirror, I have a quote that says, "Hey, beautiful, you've earned it and you belong." And the reason why I have that is because some mornings I need that reminder. I need that reminder that I've worked for where I am. I need the reminder that I've prayed for where I am and God has delivered, and I'm not here by accident. And it helps to ground me in who I am authentically, how I lead. It reminds me that I need to continue to have confidence and care and not fumble the blessings that God has given me. So it's a reminder that I do belong. It's simple, but it's meaningful to me every time I wake up and look in the mirror on a daily basis.
That's amazing. I don't want to become a poet, but I just want, this was just not prepared, right? So I just thought that what is that keeps me going, like you guys have mantra and quotes. So I come from India, right? So I love one of the poets back in India, Rabindranath Tagore. I don't know, Aparna, if you've heard about Rabindranath Tagore. So Rabindranath Tagore is the first Indian to get actually Nobel, right? Long time back. Uh, so there's a small poem that talks about where the mind is without fear. Where the mind is without fear, and I'm just reading it out, right, for the audience, for the lack of better words. It says, where the mind is without fear, and the head is held high, where knowledge is free, where the world has not been broken up into fragments by narrow domestic walls, where words come out from the depth of truth, where tireless striving stretches its arms towards perfection, where the clear stream of reason has not lost its way into the dreary desert sand of dead habit, where the mind is led forward by thee into ever widening thought and action. Into that heaven, my father, let my country awake. So it's the other part of the poem that's not relevant, but the first part, where where the mind is without fear and the head is held high. That's so important, and I've really not achieved a lot of things, but I feel every single thing I do is this keeps as a fuel to me every single day. So do the right. So again, this amazing group of pretty ladies. Thank you for taking your time out to chat with me today. I really appreciate this time you've spent with me, and thank you again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so
Appreciate it.
much. We really enjoyed this.